What made you come to a gay campground in the middle of South Arkansas?
I like the camaraderie. I like to see the different shapes and sizes of men, different personalities, and my experience with every gay campground I've been to has always been a fucking damn good time.
What's the best part of being at a gay campground?
Where do I start? Flirting, just getting to be my slutty self. Meeting people from all over the place, really. You meet a lot of great people that come from all over the place, and I just think it's awesome. You meet, different backgrounds, blackgrounds, and all people come from different walks of lives, and it's crazy how it brings everybody together. Yeah. You'll have people from, you'll have lawyers and nurses, doctors, firemen. You never know who's going to be here, and we have one commonality. We like to be naked, and we like to be men, so...
Here's the BBB&JOEB, and the BBB&JOEB, rock cock and Joe Rally. BBB&JOEB, and the BBB&JOEB, rock cock and Joe Rally. We're coming in, only seeking the truth about JFK. Tell him, Joe, here we go.
Happy 4th of July, everyone, and here we go.
What's up, everybody? Happy 4th. Happy Independence Day. Today we told the Brits to go F yourself. That's right. We're not paying your taxes anymore, you bloody bastards. And anyway, enough of all that. I know it's a holiday, so Joe, I want to kick things off by saying I understand that some people are not going to be here tonight. They will catch it later. And to those who are in the same boat as us, have nowhere better to be than here at the Lone Gunman Podcast, live 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Welcome in, folks. Welcome in. We got some folks here already. I know Brandon emailed us earlier and said he might not be able to make it all, but he would be popping in and out, or at least catch the beginning a little bit. And that's the double B, Brandon. He's actually first in here on my chart. And then, of course, Tiny, number one in your hearts and ours.
Yes. Tiny?
And yes, we can leave out. I thought you were talking about the hockey team, the Rangers. Not the Mountain Light Infantry Division.
I thought that too at first.
Oh, I was going to say, yes, we can leave out the Rangers. But no, we cannot leave out those Rangers. Not on the 4th of July.
No.
Lee Harold Oswald up in the house. What's up, Roger? Zendar 61. Howdy, all. Hello, Zendar. James Smith up in the house. The man with the plain name, James Smith. Slacker Dan's here. What's up, buddy?
Hey, Dan.
There's Shreveport Trey sliding in. Where's Trey? Where's Trey? There he is.
There he is.
Sally. Hello, Sally. What's up, Anthony?
Oh.
Queen Colleen in the house. It wouldn't be the 4th of July without our Rocket Queen, Joe.
That is true. That is a good point. Hello, Colleen.
Yes. Lovely Colleen. Thank you for stopping in. Cammy, what's up, dude? Let's see. Anybody else up in this? Paula. Hello, Paula. There she is.
Hey, Paula.
Man, chat is already jumping tonight. So thank you, folks, for coming in and hanging out with us. We got a explosive show for you tonight. This is the 4th of July.
And welcome to Trey's wife, who is here.
Wow. Trey, did she steal his YouTube account? I mean, what's going on here? What have you done with Trey? No, welcome in, Trey's wife. Like Katango up in the house. What's happening?
Yeah.
Triple B, or Double B is here for a good time, not a long time. Yes.
Yes. It is his son's birthday, the mini Double B. That was earlier in the
Nice.
in the chat. And Packer Jack is here. Happy 4th,
John
fellas.
Lilbach. What's up, John? Awesome. You sent us an email. Well, damn.
I did not.
We'll have to check it out.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely.
Hell yeah. Red Phillips.
Yes. And Light Katango. Happy 4th, you uppity colonials.
Don't be jelly. Don't be jelly.
Yes.
We got the cool English accents over here. No, I'm joking. Yours are much cooler.
Yeah.
And much more proper. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So did you enjoy your day off today, sir? You don't usually get Fridays off.
This is true. I usually don't. Normally I'm slaving away in my cubicle, but yeah, no, today spent most of the day cleaning. Nothing exciting. Just catching up on some much neglected housework and yeah, fun stuff.
Yeah.
I
I actually did.
I got my red, white, and blue tie-dye on, rocking it for the 4th of July. You know what I'm saying, Joe? With a little nostalgic TLG merch with the happy face logo.
Yeah.
I'm ready for tonight. I'm excited and ready to go. So, Joe, why don't you kick us off, man?
Sure.
Baby.
So before we kick it off, I want to share a massive announcement by Silk City Hot Sauce, introducing King's Karma Smoked Maple Habanero Hot Sauce.
Joe, before you play this, does it contain music that is going to get us copyrighted?
I don't think so. No.
Okay.
Here we go.
When you need a break and the battle of life has just become too much, there's only one sauce that can tame the torture. King's Karma Smoked Maple Habanero Hot Sauce. Long live the king.
Long live the king!
Nice.
Looks fire. And I believe it is a collab with a rapper, Rico James, who I have to admit I am not familiar with, but Rob, habanero is my jam, and Jeff sent me a bottle of maple habanero, but it had a different
label.
Yeah, thank you. And so I don't know if it's the same, but the one he sent me was absolutely fire. So I know Scott Edwards has got an order recently, and definitely head over to Silk City Hot Sauce. Link in the description. Use code Gunman10. Is that correct, sir?
No.
20?
Nope.
Gunman?
Just Gunman, all capital
Gunman.
letters.
There we go.
Welcome in Frank G, Edit Man, and Perpetual Concepts into the chat. What's up, fellas?
Hey, PC. What's up? Edit Man. How are you?
Yeah, I like that, man. Jeff's getting fancy. He's getting a little big for his britches up there, but I like it. That means he's growing and making money, and God bless him. It's the American way, baby.
Yeah. No, he's the man, and we thank him for his support of our show, and nothing but love. So
damn straight.
So I thought, Rob, as we were figuring out the topic for this week, since it is the 4th of July, that we would go over some of the witness statements from Dealey Plaza of people who heard firecrackers and fireworks. And
yeah, there was a lot of that, I think.
A lot. We have a funny Jack Ruby story regarding fireworks as well. And we're going to get into that in a second. But so I like to screw around with AI, right? Grok. I have to use Chat GPT more. I'm not as familiar with it. Yes. So I figured I'd ask Grok, What's up? How many witnesses thought they heard fireworks in Dealey Plaza during the JFK assassination? The answer, based on available data, approximately 20 to 25 witnesses in Dealey Plaza during the JFK assassination on November 22nd, 1963, reported hearing sounds they initially thought were fireworks or backfiring vehicles. The Warren Commission's investigation documented around 178 witnesses who provided statements about the event, with many describing the shots as sounding like firecrackers. Specifically, the Commission's report and subsequent analysis, including the HSCA in 1979, noted that a significant number of witnesses, Grok estimates it at 10 to 15% of the total. I think it might be a little more than that. Grok isn't always right. Use terms like firecracker or fireworks to describe the initial sound of the gunshots. Translates to about 20 to 25 individuals, though the exact numbers vary due to inconsistencies in witness statements. Some witnesses, like Abraham Zapruder, explicitly mentioned thinking the first shot was a firecracker before realizing it was gunfire. So then I did a follow-up question. Can you identify some of the witnesses who testified to hearing that? And the answer from Grok. Several witnesses in Dealey Plaza during the JFK assassination testified or reported hearing sounds they initially thought were fireworks or firecrackers. Below were some specific witnesses who described it. Abraham Zapruder, S.M. Holland, who I have statements from, Roy Skelton, and Grok goes on to name a couple more. But okay, decent start here. I like to see what Grok comes up with sometimes, you know? So let's get to, I think, maybe the most notable fireworks comment, which came from Jack Ruby. And this came from an informant in 1977 who said that Jack Ruby called him that morning of November 22nd and asked him if he would quote, like to watch the fireworks. So, of course, that would prove that Jack Ruby had foreknowledge, but there are some things that concern me about this guy's statement, and we're going to get into that now. So it actually came, Rob, from an IRS report. On March 2nd, 1977, Robert Potricus, Chief Intelligence Division, IRS, Dallas, Texas, hand-delivered a letter to Ted Gunderson, Special Agent in charge, the Dallas FBI office. The letter is on internal IRS stationery and states as follows. Dear Mr. Gunderson, recently, Arlen, Fierlendorf, a group manager in the Dallas Intelligence Division, received information from a confidential informant that might be helpful in the investigation of the Kennedy assassination. The informant stated that on the morning of the assassination, Ruby contacted him and asked him if he would like to watch the fireworks. He was with Jack Ruby and standing at the corner of the Postal Annex building, facing the Texas School Depository building at the time of the shooting. Immediately after the shooting, Ruby left and headed towards the area of the Dallas Morning News building. And Rob, I couldn't find this picture. We have shown it before of a person that looked like Ruby in front of the TSPD. But we do know that a bunch of Dallas Morning News reporters did say that he was there the whole time.
Allegedly.
Allegedly, yes. So this guy, Vanderslice.
Maybe Ruby hightailed it over to the Dallas Morning News building afterward, and maybe he had some envelopes, some fat envelopes.
Yes.
Hey, I've been here the whole time, right? Yep. Here you go. Hey, I've been here the whole time, right? Yep. Okay.
Yeah. Created an alibi, or at least, during the initial confusion, no one's keeping their eye on Ruby at that point being like, "Is he here at 12:30 exactly?"
Yeah,
right?
nobody's
So,
looking for this guy, you know.
right,
I mean,
right.
he might have been there, and he might have just told him, "Look, I've been here the whole time," you know. Oh,
And,
okay. Sure.
and wasn't it his weekly uh, uh, weekly thing to go to the Dallas Morning News and put in an ad for
Yeah.
his clubs, his
Gotta tell
routine?
what answer and what entertainers are going to be there, you know.
Right.
Come and see the titties. We got Jada tonight. Woo!
Yeah. So the informant was named Vanderslice, Bob Vanderslice, and discussing his knowledge of Ruby, Vanderslice told him on the morning of the assassination, Jack Ruby called him on the telephone and asked him if he would like to go to the presidential parade with him and if he would like to go watch the fireworks. Vanderslice said that he was with Jack Ruby and standing at the corner of the Postal Annex building facing the TSBD at the time of the shooting and went to the Dallas Morning News. I just read that. Vanderslice also told him that after Jack Ruby was arrested for killing Lee Harvey Oswald, that he himself was also arrested on an unrelated criminal charge and incarcerated at the Dallas County Jail. Vanderslice got to know Ruby better in the county jail since he was a trustee at the jail, and as Ruby's mind began to deteriorate, maybe because of Jolly and West or not, he would perform services for him, like bring him his food and reading material, because Ruby became very suspicious and felt that someone was trying to poison his food and do him harm. Ferlendorf advised that when he initially got the information from Vanderslice, he put this information in a memorandum for the IRS National Office to be disseminated to Congressman Downing's committee. The National Office returned the memorandum to Dallas, Texas, and told IRS to disseminate the information to the FBI in Dallas. Of course, it didn't really come out until 1977, which is a little problematic for me. I would have felt better if these claims happened a couple days after Ruby was arrested, per se.
Well, maybe he was in jail. I mean, I don't know when he got out of jail. Maybe not till 77. Who knows?
Yeah, he said shortly after he was arrested. I don't know exactly when, if he was in jail during that exact weekend or close to, but sometime after, for sure. He advised that in the past he had considered Vanderslice reliable, but that he does not know whether or not Vanderslice was truthful concerning the information he furnished about Jack Ruby. He advised that he had not personally talked to Vanderslice since March 4th, 1977, and that Vanderslice had not returned his telephone calls. Ferlendorf, who is the he in the few sentences prior, advised that he has talked to Vanderslice's wife twice and since March 4th, 77, and left a message for Vanderslice to call him. The last time he talked to her was last Wednesday or Thursday, and she told him that Vanderslice was in Wichita Falls, Texas area, trying to, quote, make a buck here and there. Ferlendorf stated that on March 4th, 77, Vanderslice gave him every indication that he was going to keep his appointment with the FBI. So essentially, Ferlendorf said, set up an appointment for Vanderslice to go speak to the FBI.
What was Vanderslice's first name?
I think it's Bob.
Hi, Bob Vanderslice. Nice to meet you.
I'm not 100%. I'm pretty sure it is. And he gave every indication he was going to keep the appointment with the FBI and told him that he knew where the office was located. Yeah, I know where it is. I'll be there. He advised that the possibility exists that Vanderslice might have been untruthful or could have gotten cold feet because of all the publicity surrounding the reinvestigation of the President Kennedy assassination. And of course, this is during the time of the HSCA. So, what are your thoughts on Vanderslice?
I like Bob Vanderslice very much. He sounds like a very intriguing man with a very bitter wife. I don't know. It's one of them things where you could maybe see if his arrest report, if you could dig that up and it jives, or there's got to be some kind of. I mean, if he was in jail, if he was arrested shortly after Ruby, and then was with them long enough to see him deteriorate and bring him his meals. That means he was in there for a while. It wasn't like a 3 days in and out type of deal.
Right.
So there's got to be something about this guy. Maybe in some old newspapers, Dallas newspapers, see what this guy did. I mean, with a pretty unique name like Vanderslice, you'd think something will pop up. If anybody out there has a newspapers.com subscription or whatever,
Yeah.
might do you well to look up Vanderslice in Dallas and see what you could find. Maybe he was a gun runner. I mean, who the hell knows?
Yeah. You know what? And I should have done this on slacking on my part. When you start your segment, I will check the DPD archives and see if I can find anything on the time.
Okay.
So let's continue because the fireworks continue. This is Warren Commission Exhibit 1740. It's an FBI report from December 1st, 1963. And this is a statement from a Mr. McEwen, who was an entertainer at the Carousel Club in Dallas, Texas.
Yes, he was a contortionist, Joe.
So what?
Sack on his own forehead. It's amazing. Amazing act.
During the period of 1 week before Christmas 1962 until 2 weeks in January 1963, so a little less than a month-ish, he was entertaining at the Carousel Club. He there became acquainted with Jack Ruby, who managed this club. While there, he saw Ruby on a daily basis, but he did not become particularly friendly with Ruby. He pointed out that it was his general policy when working at an establishment to, in fact, avoid as much contact as was feasible with the manager of the establishment, inasmuch as he always considered such an individual was very busy and did not have time to take up with the various entertainers unless he had some actual business with them. He recalled that Ruby lived in a single room behind the club and also kept in this room 2 dogs. He said that the room had a very untidy appearance. So let me pause there, Rob. I know on the members only on Wednesday we played a clip from Sergeant Sergeant Rowe in the DPD, who said Ruby had many different places he stayed.
He said he had many apartments.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if we can take him at his word on that. I'm sure people have looked into this. I'm sure people have looked at the phone directories from 1961, 62, 63. Now, whether they're not all accurate or not, I don't know. But, it would tend to list, because you couldn't have the same phone number at different apartments. You'd have to have a separate phone number. But, of course, there is unlisted phone numbers and things like that. But I don't know. I mean, that Rowe guy seemed pretty reliable.
Yeah. Yeah. And if there was a room behind the Carousel Club, I could definitely see Ruby keeping his dogs in there. He's not going to
pre Larry Crayford sleeping in that room. So God knows what kind of nastiness Crayford had to lay in that dirty ass room full of dog piss and Ruby jizz and God knows what.
Oh, so you think Crayford possibly moved into that room when he was there and Ruby went to his other places of living?
Well, we know by the time, a month or two before the assassination, Ruby did have an apartment. He was living with George Senator.
Yes.
Yes, his boyfriend, George Senator. And Crayford had moved into the little hole in the wall in the carousel club. That's where Crayford was living. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, very possible Ruby could have lived there before Crayford or stayed there some late nights, whatever.
Because this guy's talking. The only thing he knows is from Christmas '62 until 2 weeks into January of '63. So this is well before the assassination.
Yeah, almost a year.
Maybe he was in between apartments, Joe. Who knows?
Yeah, for sure. So McEwen's act at the Carousel Club went for approximately 1.5 weeks. After he had been appearing there 1.5 weeks, one night he, MC Ewan, told 2 or 3 jokes relative to Jewish people. He said that these jokes, in his opinion, were completely inoffensive. Immediately upon MC Ewan finishing his act, Ruby confronted him. That doesn't surprise me.
Hey, Joe, a Jew, a priest, and a cowboy walk into a bar.
Yeah, we know Ruby was very concerned about anti-Semitism, so that lines up to me. That checks out. Ruby at this time was excited, had taken offense at the jokes relative to Jewish people, and stated, quote, "My people have suffered enough." McEwen had previously been telling jokes relative to various nationalities and racial groups to which Ruby had taken no exception. He said that Ruby was easily excited, triggered, and seemed to be erratic and nervous. He could cite no specific statements or instances, however, except the above one, which he based this opinion or conclusion. On New Year's Eve, 1962 to 1963, Mr. MC Ewan was staying at a motel in Dallas, the name of which he can now not recall. There were some other entertainers whose names he also does not recall, also staying at this motel. There was a New Year's party held by entertainers, and Ruby attended this party. He said he recalled Ruby throwing firecrackers and cherry bombs, fireworks, in the swimming pool. But this activity was not out of keeping with the activities of the others at the party. So I guess a lot of people were doing this. Wouldn't the fuse go out if you threw it in the pool?
No.
Depending on the fuse, or no?
No, cherry bombs like M80s and stuff, man. You can throw them in the pool.
Okay.
They will go boom. Rob, teenage Rob may have done this a time or two in a friend's pool.
Yeah. And I guess they're talking about the pool at the motel, I guess. Wonder if it was the Six Flags, Rob.
Who knows? This
was not done through any spirit of anger on the part of Ruby, but was done in the spirit of having fun. Glad he...
Hey, cover your joint.
And of course, like anyone who met Ruby, they asked him if he had any relationship with Lee Harvey Oswald. Mr. McEwen, or MC Ewan, had never heard of Lee Harvey Oswald prior to the assassination of President Kennedy. He knows of no association between Ruby and Oswald, and knows of no connection with Ruby with any organization or group or society. So I found that funny. That lines up, and in the spirit of firecrackers and fireworks and cherry bombs.
Hey,
I felt that. Yeah. So now I'm going to go through some witness statements of people that described the initial shots as fireworks or firecrackers. First one, Mr. Earl Cabell. At the time, mayor of Dallas. He was elected in 1961. And of course, his brother, Charles Cabell, was the deputy director for operations for the Central Intelligence Agency, and was fired by JFK following the Bay of Pigs, right? And wasn't Earl, was he a paid informant? What was his exact? He was a paid informant of the CIA or something?
Oh, I'm sure he was. Yeah.
I think that came out later. Yeah.
I would think Charles could broker that deal for him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And informant, I don't know if it was paid something, but and this is a Warren Commission key persons file in the key persons files. Would you describe what you saw or heard, please, sir? Mr. Cabell, I heard the shot. Oh, a gun or a shot? And I was about to deny and say, oh, it must have been a firecracker when the second and third shots rang out. There was a longer pause between the first and second shots than there was between the second and third shots, which, of course, Rob, we have heard many, many times from many witnesses, right? The first shot, there was a pause. Second and third.
I thought it was a firecracker or backfire.
Right. Backfire was the other one.
Yeah.
It just didn't fit the theme for 4th of July.
No, we'll have to wait until backfire day for that.
They were in rapid succession.
A lot of Ruby stories about that too, as well, apparently, and David Fairley's story.
Oh, Lordy. There was no mistaking in my mind after that. There were shots from a high-powered rifle. Are you familiar with rifles? So that your statement that it was your opinion it came from a high-powered rifle was that of a person who knows something about it. Mr. Cabell, I've done a great deal of hunting and also used military shoulder guns as well as hunting rifles. So, Mr. Cabell, familiar with guns, but we're going to see this going forward, right? In terms of the trend of everyone thinking it was a firecracker. First, testimony of S.M. Holland. And he was a signal supervisor for the Union Terminal Railroad, of course, working near the Triple Underpass. Mr. Stern, this is Warren Commission. On Friday, November 2nd, will you describe what you did concerning the president's visit and where you were? Mr. Holland, well, about 11 o'clock, a couple of policemen and plainclothesmen came up on top of the Triple Underpass, and we had some men working up there. And I knew that they were going to have a parade. And I left my office and walked up to the underpass to talk to the policemen. And they asked me during the parade if I would come back up there and identify people that was supposed to be on the overpass. That is, the railroad people. His next statement is very interesting. I'm jumping later in his Warren Commission testimony. I am the signal supervisor for Union Terminal, and I was inspecting signal and switches and stopped to watch the parade. I was standing on top of the Triple Underpass, and the president's car was coming down the Elm Street. And when they got just about to the arcade, I think he means the plaza, I heard what I thought for a moment was a firecracker, and he slumped over, and I looked towards the arcade and trees and saw a puff of smoke come from the trees. And I heard 3 more shots after the first shot, but that was the only puff of smoke I saw. So he's saying he saw smoke coming from the grassy knoll area, and that was the last shot. I immediately ran around to where I could see behind the arcade and did not see anyone running from there. But the puff of smoke I saw definitely came from behind the arcade to the trees. After the first shot, the president slumped over and Mrs. Kennedy jumped up and tried to get over in the back seat to him. And then the second shot rang out. After the first shot, the Secret Service man raised up in the seat with a machine gun and then dropped back down in the seat and then immediately sped off. Everything is spinning in my head. And I remember anything else later, I will come back and tell Bill. That is Mr. Decker. And brother, it was too. I'm sure it was. Holland, stand there and watch 2 or 3 men get killed. I don't think 2 or 3 men got killed, but now that your statement makes clear, you heard 4 shots. You heard 4 shots at the time. Yes.
Breaking news, Joe. Hold on.
Sure.
Robert Murray Vanderslice. This comes from Uncle Dave. Born February 26, 1926. Died August 79. So not too long after he came forward with this information about Ruby and watching fireworks with him and there in Dealey Plaza. He died in Dallas in August of 79. So thank you, Uncle Dave. Appreciate you.
Yeah, about 2 years after.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Mr. Holland continues, and another report rang out. Report, he means shot. He's going to say this a couple times. And he slumped down in his seat, and about that time, Mrs. Kennedy was looking at these girls over here. The girls standing. Now, one of them was taking a picture, maybe Babushka lady, and the other one was just standing there, and she turned around facing the president and Governor Connolly. In other words, she realized what was happening, I guess. Now, I mean, that was apparently that. She turned back around, and by the time she can get turned around, he was hit again, a long in. I'd say a long in here. He's indicating to an exhibit. How do you know that? Did you observe that? I did observe it. It knocked him completely down on the floor, over, just slumped completely over. That second, and he's cut off. Did you hear a third report? Again, shot. I heard a third report, and I counted 4 shots. And about the same time, all this was happening, and in this group of trees, and indicating to an exhibit again, they're marking exhibits. Draw a circle around the trees where you saw the puff of smoke right in there. There was a shot, a report. I don't know whether it was a shot. I can't say that. And a puff of smoke came about 6 or 8 feet above the ground. So he's saying he saw smoke come from the knoll, right from under those trees. And at just about this location from where we're standing, you could see that puff of smoke, like someone had thrown a firecracker or something out. And that this is just the way it sounded. It wasn't as loud as the previous reports or shots. Okay. So
Yeah,
that's saying
that's why a lot of people think that it was a firecracker, because it did not sound like a rifle shot, and it sounded much different than the volley of shots to come after it.
Right.
And breaking news, Joe.
Yes.
The Double B has come through once again.
Oh,
Gifted
wow.
5 memberships. Uncle Dave got one. Jeffrey Guterman got one. Vix Pix got one. Johnny Stangle got one. And Clay Shaw or Clay Bertrand got one. Or just Clay.
Clay.
So thank you, Brandon. The Double B. Bam. Good Lord. Oh, man. He just did it again, too. Holy shit. John Limbach got another one. Stephen Rose got one. Charlie Wyman got one. Leo got one, and our buddy Glenn got one. So, man, thank you, Double B.
He gifted 2. He gifted 10 total, huh?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
You're the man, Double B. Thank you so much.
Mighty generous of you and much appreciated.
Yes.
Thank you for that.
Yes, we really appreciate it.
God bless America.
Yes.
And every other country in the world, because why not?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Especially Ireland, where Sally is. So, yeah, it wasn't as loud as the previous shots were. It could have also came from a different gun that might not have been as loud, right? Or a firecracker. I don't know. What number would that have been in the? Mr. Holland says, well, that would have. They were so close together. The second and third, and the third and fourth. The third and fourth shots were so close together, he says. So it might have been the third and the fourth. It could have been the third and the fourth. Sorry, this is kind of redundant. But there was definitely 4 reports. You have no doubt about that, Mr. Stern asks. Mr. Holland, I have no doubt about it. I have no doubt about seeing the puff of smoke come out from under those trees either. Mr. Holland, do you recall making a statement to an agent of the FBI several days after? Holland, I made a statement that afternoon in Sheriff Bill Decker's office, and then the Sunday or the Sunday following the Friday, there were 2 FBI men out outside my house at the time Oswald was shot. Interesting. Did you tell them that you heard distinctly 4 shots at that time? Yes. Mr. Holland is pretty sure that there were 4 shots, and it was the third and fourth that were so close together, not the second and third as is in the official story. So, and interesting that the FBI agents were outside his house at the time Ruby shot Oswald. So,
Got a protected important witness like SM Holland.
yeah. So I counted at least 4 Secret Service agents that described the first shot as a firecracker. And that makes me think, Rob, is this a possible excuse as to why possibly we didn't react right away, right? They all have the same kind of story, and I'm going to go through 4 of them right now. This one, Paul Landis, whose recent book, The Final Witness, which is behind me somewhere, made news last year with, the other bullet he found in the limo.
Yep, and I'll get more into that here in a little bit.
Okay. As the president's car continued around the corner, I continued to survey the crowd along the right-hand side of the road and noticed that it was fairly scattered, with hardly enough people to form a single line. I continued to look ahead to the overpass over the route we were traveling. At approximately this point, I would say the president's car and follow-up car had just completed their turns. Both were straightening out. At this moment, I heard what sounded like a report of a high-powered rifle from behind me, over my right shoulder. When I heard this sound, there were no question in my mind what it was. My first glance was at the president, as I was practically looking in his direction anyway. I saw him moving in a manner which I thought was to look in the direction of the sound. I did not realize that President Kennedy had been shot at this point. I immediately returned my gaze over my right shoulder toward the modernistic building I had observed before. With a quick glance, I saw nothing and immediately started scanning the crowd and intersection, blah, blah, blah. In fact, I recall Special Agent Jack Reddy saying, "What was it, a firecracker?" I remarked, "I don't know. I don't see any smoke." So far, the lapsed period of time could not have been over 2 or 3 seconds. Now let's go to Commission Document 3, the Secret Service report of December 1863. Special Agent Hickey was riding in the left rear seat of the follow-up car very shortly after turning to the intersection leading down to the underpass. Hickey recalls hearing a loud report which sounded like a firecracker. This appeared to him to come from the right rear and at ground level. He stood up and looked to his right and rear, but nothing caught his attention except people shouting and cheering. A disturbance in his car caused him to look forward towards the president's car, which was perhaps 2 or 3 seconds later. President slumped forward, blah, blah, blah. We heard this already. Now, let's go to Mr. Kellerman, who was in the presidential limo, and this is his Warren Commission testimony with Mr. Spector. Now, I think you may have answered this, but I want to pinpoint just when you heard the statement which you have attributed to President Kennedy in relationship to the sound which described as a firecracker. Mr. Kellerman, this noise, which I attribute as a firecracker when this occurred, and I am in the process of determining where it comes because I am sure it came off my right rear somewhere. The voice broke in right then. About the same time? That's correct, sir. Now, did President Kennedy say anything beside, "My God, I am hit"? That is the last words he said, sir. That's sad last words. That makes me sad.
Yeah. Also hard to speak when you have allegedly a bullet that just tore through your throat.
Right.
Which we'll get into here in a minute. So
yes.
Keep that in mind, folks.
Yes. He did seem like he was, his hands were at his throat, Jackie kind of leaned
Well,
forward.
his hands came up, yeah, and ballistically, we'll get into what I think actually happened and what all this means. But according to the official story of the Warren Commission, the first shot entered into his back and exited through his throat, but yet he still managed to speak, allegedly.
Mhm.
So I'll try to clarify some of this for everybody here in a little bit.
Sounds good. And this is a United States Secret Service document of Mr. Glenn Bennett. And I'm going to skip the first thing part because I'm running a little over. But he said, at this point, I heard what sounded like a firecracker. I immediately looked from the right crowd physical area and looked towards the president, who was seated in the right rear seat in his limousine open convertible. At this moment, I looked at the back of the president. I heard another firecracker noise and saw the shot hit the president about 4 inches down from the right shoulder. A second shot followed immediately and hit the right rear high of the president's head. I immediately hollered, "He's hit," and reached for the AR-15 located on the floor of the rear seat. Special Agent Hickey had already picked up the AR-15. We peered towards the rear and particularly the right side of the area. I had drawn my revolver when I saw Special Agent Hickey had the AR-15. I was unable to see anything or one that could have fired the shots. Shoots, misspell. The president's car immediately kicked into high gear and the follow-up car followed. So he was in the follow-up car of LBJ, I believe.
Yes, but he could see a minuscule bullet hole 3 cars up in JFK's back. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
buddy.
Well, I think I think the Secret Service agents were kind of coached to, in terms of their statements, to give.
Well, I mean, he literally says, I looked at the back of the president. I heard another firecracker noise and saw the shot that hit the president 4 inches down from the right shoulder. He literally says that.
Yeah.
And if he's 3 cars back, I mean, come on, man.
Yeah. And this is one day, 11/23. This is the Saturday of that weekend, November 63. So he then goes to Parkland Hospital, blah, blah, blah. Now this is statement Jerry Kivett. I might be pronouncing that wrong because it's not, looks like it was typed over. I was riding, this Jerry Kivett was riding in the vice presidential follow-up car. So behind LBJ, immediately behind vice president's car and the third car behind the president's car. The motorcycle was headed slightly downhill toward an underpass. As the motorcycle was approximately 1/3 of the way to the underpass, traveling between 10 and 15 miles per hour, I heard a loud noise. Someone hollered, "What was that?" It sounded more like an extremely large firecracker, in that it did not seem to have the sharp report of a rifle. As I was looking in the direction of the noise, which was to my right rear, again, the right rear is consistent here, which makes me think that it might have been coached. I heard another report. Then there was no doubt in my mind what was happening. I looked forward to the vice presidential car, and as I did so, I could see the spectators, approximately 25 to 50, scattering. Some were falling to the ground, some were running up a small hill, and some were just standing there stunned. Here I heard the third shot. Rob, were people running up? I think, what do you mean by a small hill? He has to mean the grassy knoll, right? Were they running up that quickly before the third shot?
I doubt it. I mean, the alleged shots took place, allegedly, in 6 seconds. So I don't think anybody at 3 seconds in is starting to run yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're not expecting this stuff, and I mean, if you're expecting to be shot at, that's one thing. But if you're not expecting to be shot at, it generally takes a couple seconds to process what the hell's going on.
Yes, for sure.
And then once you realize, that's when your fight or flight kicks in, or your stop, drop, and roll kicks in, or your stand there and do nothing kicks in. And
right. For sure.
I don't think that early. No, but they weren't running up the hill that early. No.
Yeah. We have another testimony of Mrs. Donald Baker, and she also thought it was a firecracker, but I'm going to skip that really quickly and finishing my my grok thing. I asked, why did people initially think it was firecrackers instead of gunfire during the JFK assassination? Again, just curious as what the response was. Number one, context and expectation. The event occurred during a festive motorcade in Dallas, with crowds gathered to see President Kennedy. Firecrackers or other celebratory noises might have been expected in such a lively public setting, leading people to initially interpret the sharp sounds as something benign. Okay. Sound similarity. The sound of gunfire, especially from the distance or in an urban environment with echoes, which Dealey Plaza was, can resemble the sharp, rapid pops of firecrackers. And Grok needs to learn the shots fired by Lee Harvey Oswald from a high-power rifle produce quick, loud reports. That could be confused with firecrackers. Number three, unfamiliarity with gunfire. Many bystanders, particularly civilians in a non-combat setting, were not accustomed to the sound of gunfire. In 1963, Dallas was not a war zone. Thanks, Grok. And for many, the idea of an assassination was unthinkable, so their minds defaulted to a more familiar sound, like firecrackers. And yeah, of course, we know Dealey Plaza is kind of an echo chamber, in a sense, an urban environment. But I think 4 is the best reason. Initial confusion and denial. The suddenness of the event and the shock of violence in a celebratory moment caused cognitive dissonance. People's initial instinct was to rationalize the sound as something harmless, like firecrackers, rather than immediately accepting the reality of an attack. So,
Interesting.
yes, and unfamiliar. Number 3, I forgot to say this. The Secret Service agents should have, were trained with gunfire. They were not bystanders or civilians, right? So they should have been familiar with gunfire. But we see 4 Secret Service agents, and I think there's a couple more, say, I didn't respond right away. I thought it was firecrackers. So, but the confusion and denial being the big one for me, Rob, makes the most sense, because it's hard to come to grips with, hey, the president was just assassinated right in front of me, especially at the first pop, which had the second and third came much closer. So they had the first shot to think, okay, this could have been a firecracker before the second and third and possibly fourth happened. So that is all I have on the firecrackers, sir. I know I went a little over on that.
See what I said before the show?
Yeah, I know. That's all right. Erica can miss the fireworks.
You'll give her some fireworks later, right?
Yes.
There you go.
So I thought that was appropriate considering the day.
Some David Ferry style fireworks.
She won't. I'm not gonna say it. She doesn't let me David Ferry her. Let me put it that way. I hope she doesn't listen to this. Oh man.
It's doubtful she'd make it this far in.
Yeah.
All right.
Oof, oof. All right, sir.
So the fireworks brings us to the ballistics of this whole event. And it's part of the things that we don't talk about very much here on the show, because there's such a diverse belief in ballistics. There's such a deep, cavernous divide about the medical evidence as well, which I'll touch on because it kind of has to do with ballistics as well. But the ballistics itself, and a lot of what Joe was talking about here when it comes to what people heard and why I jumped in and pointed out that it was the first shot, right? After the first shot, Kennedy was able to say, "Oh my God, I've been hit." Right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we were led to believe what the Warren Commission would have us believe, that the first shot was the shot that entered the back and exited the throat area, there's no way in hell JFK could have said anything. I mean, it would have tore right through his vocal cords. You know, I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like, it wouldn't have been, he couldn't have formed words and got it out.
Right. He could have mumbled, maybe.
Maybe.
I don't know. Yeah.
But when you take everything into context, the entire story of all of this, and here's what I've tried to do and lay out for everybody as to what makes the most sense to me. And if you don't agree, that's fine. That's fine. I've always had a problem with the FBI's version of the shot sequence. And of course, they had a big problem when they first came out with their initial analysis of the shot sequence. After James Tague came forward and claimed to have been hit by a fragment of a miss or maybe a chip of concrete or something, right? I mean, hell, he could have been hit by a fragment, that hit something, whether it be the curb. You know, we know they cut that piece of curb out of Elm Street and took it away. But there is pictures of it. You know, it appears it could have been a bullet strike. It could have been a wheel from a car that hit it. Who knows?
Yeah.
Right? We'll never know. That's why sometimes we avoid certain topics here on the show, because there's just a point to where you can argue back and forth so long, but you're never going to have a definitive answer because it could really be anything. You know, I mean, a bullet, could have hit the metal strip on the top of the limousine windshield and kicked a piece out and hit Tague in the face. Who knows?
Yeah, ricochet. Yeah.
James Tague could have had 2-inch long fingernails and reached up and scratched his nose like this and cut and drew blood. I mean, who knows? Oh shit.
He needed a Manny.
Boom. Gary Peters. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, sir. Really appreciate it.
Blood was confused for the smoke under the trees. Maybe so. Yeah, I heard Gene Hill recently talk about the pink mist. I don't know if it was that big to be confused for a smoke cloud, but yeah, very interesting stuff. And thank you so much for the 20.
Thank you, sir.
Hell yeah. You rock, Gary. Well, back to the whole ballistics of this thing, and I'll try to walk you through my mind as we do. So we have upwards of 20 or 30 witnesses that stated on record that they thought the first shot was a firecracker. Okay. Now, obviously, it could have been a firecracker. We have an incident at the corner of Elm and Houston shortly before the presidential motorcade came through there, where we have, the guy fainting and they call an ambulance for him, right? Which is a kind of a confusing thing and a really bad time. Also, I could see the use of a firecracker being used as a distraction to cause confusion at a very good time, an opportune time for the actual shooters. Also, it could be, and this kind of ties in with Paul Landis's story. And after hearing his version of events with the magic bullet CE 399, his story actually makes sense, because none of the shit at Parkland makes sense. None of the stuff that it went through 2 people and made 7 wounds and broke bones and came out looking like it did make sense. That doesn't make sense, right? All these stories of, the bullet zigzagging in midair and people trying to figure out, how it did all this stuff and still come out looking like it did. That does not make sense to me. What does make sense is that in the heat of the moment, this guy found CE 399 exactly where he said he found it, which is in the little gully behind the back seat and the trunk, right? Now, how could it possibly be there? Well, JFK was shot in the back, right? Allegedly, the bullet went through his back and exited his throat. But everybody knows that the doctors at Parkland claimed the throat wound to be an entrance wound because it did not have any characteristics of an exit wound, right?
Yeah.
It looked like an entrance wound. If it was an exit wound, it's coming out, the skin would have been splayed and split open out in an outward manner, and it did not look like that. An entrance wound would tuck the skin in, push it in as it goes in.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the interesting thing. The sound of a firecracker from the first shot. I think the first shot was likely fired from a Mannlicher Carcano, because CE 399 was a Mannlicher Carcano bullet, right? But you have to imagine, Joe, that a lot of this ammunition for this carbine is at this point at least 20 years old, if not older. Okay. So you figure maybe the gunpowder has lost a little bit of its oomph over all these years, right? And as it's fired, it doesn't really have enough ass to penetrate all the way in to Kennedy's back.
Interesting.
During the autopsy at Bethesda, there were 2 FBI agents present, Seibert and O'Neill. And if you go back and you read their report of being there at the autopsy and reporting what the autopsy doctors are finding, that the back wound was probed by a finger or something, and they said it only went into the first knuckle of your little finger, which is not far. I mean, you're talking maybe a half an inch, something like that, which would indicate that the bullet did not go all the way through Kennedy. It went a little bit in and it got stuck in his back. All right. And maybe it fell out instantly, or maybe it didn't. I don't know. But as you watch the Zapruder film and you see Kennedy after the first shot, immediately, or pretty quickly, you see Jackie's arm come up and around Kennedy's back as she kind of pulls him toward her. And she may have knocked it out accidentally out of his back and into that little gully in between the back seat and the trunk. Or the viciousness of the headshot, which caused that backward movement, may have knocked the bullet out of his back and into the little gully, right?
Yeah.
So because all the people heard a sound distinctly different than the other shots. This could have been like a dud bullet, basically, is what I'm trying to say here. It might have not had enough ass to go all the way in. It wouldn't have had enough ass to deform itself, because it just didn't have that. I know there's a word I'm missing here, not trajectory, but I don't know. It'll come to me. But so when you put all of that together, the sound, the fact that, possibly, this old rifle firing old ammunition wouldn't have been up to par, up to snuff. And the Parkland doctors claiming that the throat wound was a frontal shot, which would indicate, okay, he's gotten shot once in the back. He's shot once in the front. through the throat. Connolly's hit by something separate. And I don't know if it's from the back or front or what's going on with him, because I haven't really dived into it too terribly, but it's pretty much all at the same time. All this is going on. And then, of course, you have the final shot, right?
And you have the take ricochet or whatever that was.
Right. And you have to remember the bullet trajectory, the angles don't necessarily line up right when you're talking about the back shot and the throat. Okay. For something to go in your back and exit through your throat, it would need to be coming at an upward angle. Okay.
Right.
And we had supposedly have Oswald shooting from a severe downward angle. Right.
It would have to come from the storm drain.
Yeah.
Or an angle like that is what I'm saying. Like below. Right.
Yeah. And from behind. So we know that that's not right. So all that being said, just to give you a little better picture of what I'm trying to say, even though I'm not saying it very well. All right. So the top left photo here is a frontal throat shot trajectory entrance. Okay.
Yeah.
And you see where it kind of is going to come out. It's going to come, if it were to come out, it would come out right at the top of the back and the base of the neck. Boom. Right. Now, the picture to the right, to me, that is where if the throat shot was an exit wound, that is where the bullet would have had to go in. Okay. And we don't have an entrance wound on Kennedy's back this high. All right. Now, the picture below, the one by itself, is what we call actual trajectory shots. So the back wound is at a downward angle and is well below the throat area. It is not going to exit through the throat. It may go in just a little bit, and then the bullet gets knocked out. Done. Then we have a throat shot, both and from the front, and a front temple shot, which of course is what they also said at Parkland happened. That accounts for what you see in the Zapruder film. And, you know, and the guy, Malcolm Kilduff, pointing right here to the temple. Okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
The press secretary. I mean, I'm sure the guy knows what's going on. He multiple times said he was shot in the temple. So if you're shot in the temple, then it's going to blow half your head off. You know, like what we see in the Zapruder film. Now, above, the picture above is what the Parkland doctors saw. Okay? They saw an exit wound in the right rear of Kennedy's head. So if a bullet went in through the temple and ripped down through and exited out the right rear, boom, that's what you would see. Right? And that's what the Parkland doctors saw. And the one below, or no, I'm sorry, the top one is what the Bethesda doctors say they saw. The one below is what the Parkland people say they saw, which was a massive blowout along the right side of the head, which is consistent to what we see in the Zapruder film. Right. You know, with the orange blob and the flap coming down. And even you can incorporate this from the top photo, this big blowout in the back of the head, fist-sized hole, as many people have claimed to see in the back of the head. It also incorporates into this wound. So you have to imagine that on the side here, there's a flap that is exposed, it comes down, but yet still attached. So you could put the flap back up, and you would really only see this gaping hole here at the back. Right? Mm-hmm. Which kind of lines up. Now here we have the autopsy sheet of the wounds and cranial shot analysis, and then below that where the alleged wounds were exactly. And you can see at the bottom right how low in the back shot actually was. And on the left, how far up the throat exit wound was. To me, these did not come from the same bullet, Joe. I'm sorry, I just don't buy it. And a lot of people don't buy it. I mean, we have the Parkland doctor saying one thing, the Bethesda autopsy saying another. And, most people don't know who to believe, who to put their faith in. But if you take into consideration everything from the very first sound of a firecracker. Now, it was either a firecracker or it wasn't. It was either a firecracker or a very weak gunshot from a very old rifle and old ammunition. Landis' story backs up the claim. If this bullet didn't have enough ass to get all the way into Kennedy or barely get into him and then fall out, he would have found it where he said he did. And the fact that he waited all these years to say anything doesn't surprise me. Again, no Secret Service agent, and like Joe said, they were probably coached and after the event, none of them got in any trouble. They were told what to say, and boom, 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 right? So that event, though, haunted Landis. He wasn't there much longer after that because he couldn't. This is what he was seeing every day, and what he was dreaming about at night. This event haunted him, as it would any righteous person, whose job it is to protect the president. And here, this guy gets blown away in front of you.
Yeah, you failed on your mission.
Yeah, and he kind of didn't want to think about that job anymore, that event anymore, and he moved on with his life and did a whole lot of other things until the very end when it was time for him to tell his story. So the fact that he waited so long, it doesn't bother me. But, his story makes the most sense when it comes to CE 399. To me. I mean, you don't have to buy into it, but if you got a better explanation of how CE 399, came out looking like it did and on a stretcher in Parkland, I'm open to it. But to me, his story makes the most sense. And the Ballistics tell their own story, Joe. When you just use some common sense, folks, just common sense. I don't think we'll ever know we can only speculate about the shot sequence and the amount of shots. I mean, remember, a lot of people said that they heard 4 shots. And in fact, during the HSCA and then their final report and the analysis of the audio of the shot sequence in Dealey Plaza, they heard on the tape 4 shots or 4 distinct, reports, loud noises. So it's not out of the realm of speculation that there were 4 shots.
Yeah, didn't they say a shot came from the knoll, but it missed? Wasn't that in their final report or something like that?
They said a shot came from the knoll. I don't know whether it missed or not.
Okay.
But, if you watch the Zapruder film, I don't think it did.
No, I don't either. Back and to the left.
Right. But, I would say at least I'm comfortable with saying that the throat shot came from the front in some direction, from somewhere up front, and that the final headshot came from up front somewhere. Now, of course, if you're going to frame somebody, and me saying that the bullet comes from the Carcano does not mean that Oswald was up there firing it. Okay, folks? You have to imagine this as a frame-up job. Dude's a patsy, right? So if somebody is up there and they manage to use this rifle to get off a shot, say it only fired the first shot, and they threw down a couple shells, whatever, hid the rifle and got the hell out of there very quickly. And then that initiated the volley of other shots from the front and possibly another position from the rear, from the Dallas County Records Building or the Dow Tex or wherever this other shooter was. Because I don't think you can necessarily deny, if you look at Connolly's wounds, that at least one that hit him came from the rear. But I think the only rear shot that hit Kennedy was that shallow shot into the back. Now, when you're talking about ballistics in 1963, okay, we're not talking, CSI here, folks. Okay, this was way before that. Now, of course, the Dallas police is not going to be on top of, analysis and all of this other stuff. This was the FBI's job. Supposedly, they were the cutting edge experts in ballistics and all this analyzation that can be done on these bullet fragments and all this and that. But now there's something called CBLA.
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 What does that mean?
Compositional bullet lead analysis. Okay. And this is something that the FBI was touting. We can definitely determine, that this compositional bullet lead analysis, that the fragments in the car could be matched to Carcano ammunition as an exclusion to any other bullet based on the lead composition of the bullet. Now, it was initially used to link bullet fragments to specific ammunition batches, Joe. So they could say that, okay, all these bullets came from the same batch. They were all manufactured at the same time, right? And they could use that speculation to determine whether or not, all the fragments and bullets came, were the same type. So say you had two Carcano bullets or one Carcano bullet and two 30-06 bullets, well, they could do an analysis on the 30-06 bullet and determine that it was made up of a different lead composition than this other bullet, allegedly. But this science, or junk science, if you want to call it that, was later discredited after research found that its scientific basis was severely flawed, Joe. The National Academy of Sciences reviewed CBLA and concluded that the science was flawed, leading to courts rejecting this evidence and the FBI to discontinue its use to determine its evidentiary value.
Right.
So a lot of these folks who thought they were smarter than everybody else and they could do all these crazy things, when it comes to analysis and all this stuff way ahead of their time, it was a bunch of bullshit, basically.
Yeah, because even the court of laws didn't even acknowledge it or discredited it and said, we're not using this anymore.
Yeah. So there's that. Now, recently, Joe, a computational ballistic analysis of the cranial shot, this would be the final shot to John F. Kennedy, was done. And as recently as 2023, and in which they computationally simulated projectile skull impacts from the direction specified in official reports and from 3 other directions. Detailed geometric models of the human head and ammunition, as well as known parameters from the assassination site, served as the supportive base for analysis. Constitutive mathematical models for the impact of projectile material with skull tissues at supersonic speed were employed to analyze bone and bullet fragmentation mechanics. Simulated fracture characteristics of bone and bullet were compared with photographic and X-ray evidence. The most likely origin of the fatal shot was determined based on the degree of corresponding deformation and fragmentation between simulation and documented evidence. Computational corroboration could be established as physically consistent with high-speed impact from the rear, as established by the official commissions. Simulations of 3 other speculative shot origins did not correspond with the documented evidence. Now, of course, I hear you out there, and I have the same reservations, folks. Junk in, junk out. It's a very, very old school philosophy. So these fancy computer models and Dale Myers and all this bullshit, right? Any computer model is only as good as the information that you're putting into it. Okay.
Right, that you're inputting. Right.
So these guys can come out with this paper, but we have no idea. They can say whatever they want to say. We have no idea exactly what information was fed into this computer computational analysis. I mean, we just have no way of knowing exactly. And is the information they're putting in there scientifically accurate, evidentially accurate, if that's a word? I don't know how you can be so sure that a bone is going to fracture a certain way. I mean, you'd have to be just a fraction of a millimeter could screw everything up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So these people at Science Direct can kiss my ass.
Yeah.
To me, this is another attempt, to try to recreate the assassination using a computer model, much like Dale Myers did in 2003. But again, I just don't see it. And you would have to put in, I don't know if you can, input all the correct information that you needed to. How does a computer know how a Manlick or Carcano firing 20-year-old ammunition would fire? They're talking about supersonic speed and all this other shit. Who knows? If you had a defective bullet with degraded gunpowder.
Yeah.
They say the underlying computational mathematical technique used in this study is the finite element method, or FEM, the most widely applied method in engineering to simulate complex physical phenomena. Now, this, of course, is something similar to if you're building a skyscraper, Joe, and you want to see how the skyscraper will react in earthquakes or fires. You can shake it up in the computer model. You can set it on fire in the computer model. You can have an asteroid hit the son of a bitch in the computer model.
Or a plane.
Yeah, or a plane.
Sorry.
And see how the building will react structurally, right? But in order for that to be correct information, the event would have to corrupt the building exactly as it's corrupted in the computer model. i.e., the plane would have to hit exactly where the model plane hits the model to accurately gauge how the building is going to react to that specific scenario. You can't just say, well, if it gets hit with a comet or an asteroid, here is how it's going to react. You have to be very site specific when you're talking about this, exactly where in the building is hit, because the structural integrity of a building drastically depends on where exactly the defect is taking place. Is it near the top? Is it in the middle? Is it at the bottom? And when you're talking earthquakes, you're talking different magnitudes. You could have a 6.1 magnitude or 9.5 magnitude. Yeah. Just a 0.1 difference will, the building's going to react different.
Right. That's going to affect the results. Right.
yeah, the ground is not going to shift exactly as it does in the model. You know, and they're trying to apply all this to an event in history where there's so many variables that I don't think it's possible to accurately recreate this in a computer model. I just don't. There's just too many variables. Now, the projectile model, so substantial controversy surrounds the bullet's alloy composition. In the present report, it was assumed that the bullet jacket Joe.
Assume.
You know what happens when you assume?
You make an ass out of you and me.
Yes. They assumed that the bullet jacket consisted of 90% copper and 10% zinc, and the soft core consisted of just common lead. To realistically simulate bullet fragmentation behavior, adequate material modeling is essential. Jacket material was modeled using a modified version of the Johnson-Cook constitutive relation. The model expresses the equivalent flow of an actual bullet. Following the assassination, 3 small bullet lead fragments and 2 larger jacket fragments were found in the limo. Whether both fragments were components of the same bullet could not be determined, although the FBI said they were, using CBLA. Fragment CE567 with partial lead core enclosed had a mass of 2.89 grams, and a fragment CE569 had a mass of 1.36 grams. Based on the circumstances described and as the shots were simulated from 4 directions, number 1 from behind, originating from the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository, from the right, the grassy knoll, the front slight left south knoll, and from the front slight right storm drain. Simulated bullet and bone fracture characteristics resulting from these directions were compared with the forensic evidence. The simulation results based on the shot direction concluded by the Warren Commission. Nothing else since then. Due to controversy surrounding official reports in regard to the assassination of Kennedy, the fatal headshot was analyzed in the present report by means of numerical simulation. Again, if the Warren Commission did not get the shot sequence right, then this study is ultimately flawed.
Yeah.
Because ideally, shot sequence is very important because it affects the body, right? In different ways. So tiny fractional movements is going to affect the analysis of a cranial impact and where it enters and exits. So these guys from Science Direct, I'm just not buying it. I mean, they gave it a good college try, Joe.
Yeah.
To try to, support the fact that, all the bullets came from behind the 6th floor, the School Book Depository, from Oswald, et cetera, but I'm just not buying it. They're not convincing. The science is not there. I mean, I'll give them credit for trying, but for me, that's a no for me, dog, as Randy Jackson would say on American Idol. And like optoeconomist said, the computer simulation can at best only give the probabilities of various outcomes, not a particular solution in detail. Exactly.
Right. If the inputs are somewhat off, the outputs are going to be definitely off.
Yeah. And, I would like to know, Joe, whether or not their computer simulated model has CE399 making all of these wounds and coming out looking like it did. So in all their little simulations, did this bullet do all of this damage to 2 people, hit all these bones and internal organs and come out looking like that? I highly doubt that any of their computer model bullets did come out looking like that, or were able to inflict all of these different wounds in all of these different people. And of course, there's no mention of that whatsoever in their study, which is highly sus to me.
Right. So they don't actually describe all their inputs and all their at like $3.99, like you just said.
Yeah, and like Sally said, no mention of the Harper fragment either in their analysis. So, and based on the differences of the medical evidence, who knows where they were pulling from? If they're pulling strictly from the Bethesda autopsy, then of course their findings are going to be flawed. Like every doctor at Parkland said that the throat wound was an entrance wound. You know, there was a massive gaping hole in the back right side of his head, you know, to where his brains are running out. Somehow at the autopsy, they come out with an intact brain. It's amazing. And this is why we avoid this topic, because it's so controversial, because it just comes down to a matter of what you choose to believe. But to be truly informed on the subject, you have to read everything. You have to examine all of the evidence, all of the testimony, all of the movies, pictures, diagrams, everything. You have to take into consideration the weapon, the witnesses, everything. What we have, what do we have? We have C-399. We have a bullet that doesn't look like it was barely shot out of a rifle or hit anything. Right. And to me, that screams volume. And it also adds credence that if Landis said, you know, that he found this bullet where he said he did, and we have a shallow back wound on Kennedy, makes sense to me. This bullet didn't have enough ass to get into him, you know, or deform itself, and it simply fell out or was you know, knocked out. Right. And there it laid until Landis found it. Landis put it in his pocket, took it in, set it on a stretcher. Oh, they might need this. Oh, whatever. You know, at that point, you're not thinking clearly in the middle of all this chaos and craziness that's going on. You're just acting. You know, I'm sure his brain somewhat processed, well, this might be important, you know, type of thing. But yeah, I don't know. That's the Triple B's personal ballistic analysis. You don't have to be right there with me or anything, but I'm just saying, for everything that I've looked at, and I'm just going with what makes the most sense to me, the most plausible scenario that I can come up with and share with you. And that's it, folks. That's it.
And Rob, question, didn't the tracheotomy in the throat kind of make it more difficult to figure out whether it was an entrance or an exit wound once they kind of put that hole in his throat and put whatever tube that consists of?
Well, yeah. I mean, at that point, you're sliding a scalpel through an existing wound, you know, to open it up bigger so you can install the tracheotomy airway deal. So that's why I think that the testimony of the Parkland doctors who saw the wound before they cut it open and put in the trach is important, because the doctors at Bethesda who are doing the autopsy, they can kind of figure, okay, well, the Parkland doctors cut his throat over an existing wound and put the trach in, but they've destroyed the visual at that time, you know, of the wound. So the only people that really know whether or not that it was an entrance or an exit are the people at Parkland. And they all said it was an entrance wound.
Yeah.
And these are doctors who see bullet wounds on a pretty consistent basis in an emergency room. And not just one, not just two, not just three, not just four, not just five. Many doctors at Parkland said the same thing. Entrance wound.
Yeah, and I think Dr. Curtis, who recently testified at the Luna hearing, said something similar to that. I don't know exactly, but I think he did.
Yeah, and we didn't even get into any of this stuff, but Shabird says they dug that bullet out of his throat on the flight to Bethesda, in my opinion. And there's lots of people out there like Lifton and Doug Horn who believe that there was some fuckery going on with pre-autopsy, with
Right.
some of Kennedy's wounds and some alteration of the body pre-making it to DC, or going to Walter Reed Hospital first before it went to Bethesda. Like I said, I talked to Dennis David. I sat down across from him in a hotel room. This is the guy who received Kennedy's body, so he says, in a gray metal shipping casket at the rear of Bethesda Naval Hospital. It came in a hearse. Okay? But we have pictures of Jackie Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, arriving, and this ornate bronze casket is being taken out of the airplane and loaded into a hearse and taken to Bethesda, where it is unloaded at the front of the hospital. So, there's a lot to this. And again, that's another murky subject where, you really have to examine everything.
Right.
Not just what Dennis David said, not just what, people like Gerald Custer say. And there's a lot of people that were around then, who witnessed different things at Bethesda going on. And we also have, two FBI guys who wrote a report standing right there watching. I don't trust anything that comes from Humes or Boswell, the actual autopsy doctors. And I do believe that there was some high-ranking brass in that room watching what was going on and kind of directing traffic, for sure. So, all that being said, that's my analysis of the ballistics. From the fireworks sound to the actual shots, this is what we have to go with, folks. So when you take everything into consideration, not just part of it, not just from this person or that person or this report or that report, you have to take everything into context and see what makes the most sense. Use a little logic, use a little common sense. Don't think too hard. Don't make it too difficult or intricate. Keep it simple, stupid, right?
Yeah.
And what makes the most sense that happened. And that's, to me, that kind of makes the most sense to me.
I agree. And as you will know, I am like the least ballistic or the least medical evidence guy you will ever meet. Like I just that's not my thing. But everything you said sounds completely logical. For sure. And I want to go over a couple comments, Rob, because Frank G, who I want to say hi to, happy 4th, sir. I was skeptical of Landis' story at first, but like BBB is saying, when you hear his story in context, it's credible. It's exactly what you were just saying, right?
Yeah. Everybody's going to say, wow, he waited, all these years to come out with it, blah, blah, blah. And, there's reasons why he waited so long, personal reasons. The time to come out with a book was not 60 years ago or even 50 years ago. And at that point in his life, he had moved on from all of this horse shit. And he's doing something else with his life. He wants to leave all that behind in the past and not dwell on it, not think about it, until he's older and he realizes the importance of history and getting things right. And he's motivated to write a book to tell his story.
Yeah.
And, according to him, this is what happened. And, when you put it into context with other events and you think about what likely could have happened, based on what Landis said, then to me, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes sense to me the way you laid it out there, sir, for sure. Optoeconomist, hello, sir. Always has great comments. The frontal shot trajectory would have had a slight decline, i.e., not rising. Correct.
Well, depending on where it was shot from,
Right.
you know, if you're up on the grassy knoll, yes. If you're in the storm drain, no. If you're further back, not so much. You know, depending on how, you know, Elm Street curves and then goes kind of downhill. You know, there's just so many factors when you're trying to figure this stuff out. It's maddening.
Yeah, and for the record, I do not give any weight to the storm drain thing. To me, it's too much of a stretch.
And I don't think it would drop 4 or 5 inches, you know, from the throat to the back.
Right.
Unless he's, you know, at the very top of a tree or something on the grassy knoll shooting down.
That's true. Jason Samuels, do you think the headshot came from the South Knoll? I don't know, but I think it's possible. I think it's possible. I stood on the South Knoll with David Boylan this past November, and it's a prime spot, that's for sure. But I just really don't know. Frank G again. Landis was embarrassed because he had PTSD and mishandled evidence. No surprise he kept quiet for decades.
Yeah. Pretty much.
You got to keep all that in consideration, right? Tiny says, I'm 100% sure the, quote, coup de grace headshot came from the South Knoll. Sniper certified.
Or coup de grace.
Coup de grace. I butchered that. But Tiny, I didn't know you were a sniper. I thought you were a drone queen. I'm just messing with you. I love you, Tiny. Frank G again. I think CBLA is also called neutron activation analysis, which HCA claimed proved single bullet theory. But neutron activation analysis has since been completely discredited.
You are correct.
Yeah, and that's what we talked about on our book review last week.
Yeah, Howard Rothman got into a little bit of that.
Yeah.
Yep.
I had not known that it has since been completely discredited, though. But thank you for that, sir.
A lot of junk science in the early days, Joe.
That's true, right? And yeah, Tiny Dancer says it's well worth the $9.99. She's mentioning to be a covert operator, a member of this channel, to hang out with the crew every Wednesday night. We have 2+ hour hootenanny every Wednesday.
Or hootenannies. God, you are from the north. Jesus Christ.
I know. No side rails, no holds barred, no political correctness allowed, and no possible for being demonetized. We play videos over there. We played a really interesting one 2 days ago that I referred to earlier. And yeah, if you guys want Triple B and the Joe B, no holds barred,
unfiltered.
Yes. Yes.
Unafraid.
Yes. Frankie G, the more I learn about the HSCA, the more I think it was just a continuation of the cover-up. I don't disagree with you there, Frank. I don't disagree.
But they did say that Kennedy was likely killed as a result of a conspiracy, which the Warren Commission did not say. And they also were with the auditory evidence that there was 4 shots. So, and 1 came from the grassy knoll. So I give them their props. Yeah. And a lot of good shit came out of the HSCA as far as them reinvestigating the case and going back and talking to witnesses. We have so much more documents and evidentiary stuff to go through thanks to the HSCA. So I'm not going to totally trash them.
Right.
There was good things that came out of it, and there was also bad things as well. You can say the same for any investigation that's tended to be slanted one way or the other.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to say hi to Turin Horse. How are you, sir?
So, turn.
Rex Bradford did a good talk about this, and I think he's talking about the ballistics. And yeah, I mean, Rex Bradford back in the day did a ton of great things like this.
Not as good as the one that Triple Bradford just did here on the Lone Gunman podcast.
Triple Bradford, I like it.
And how much more credible than Rex Bradford? I mean, come on, let's be real here.
Cat's Eddie Steve, Frank, Robert Blakey was installed just 2 comments ago on the HSCA to derail the outcome. Yeah, I mean, we know he was like super focused on the mafia, but like Rob just said, he did. In the conclusion, was probable that he was killed from a conspiracy, but they were very vague about it. So,
yeah, meaning more than one shooter from 2 locations. So, not that vague.
Frank G, can you get Doug Horn
or Doe
Horn? Doe Horn.
I'd rather have Doe Horn on this show than Doug Horn
as a guest. Sometimes you never know. Possibly. I know he just did something on solving JFK, but you never know. Possibly. I'm not opposed. So, but those are all the comments I had starred as you were talking, sir.
Right on, right on. Well, I think that'll do it for us tonight, Joe. I do have one more thing before we go, though.
Okay.
Quickly. Oh, shit. Something happened. Hold on.
Ruby, how do you know we're almost done? She just came running in here.
Double B comes through again and gifted 10 more memberships.
What?
Bobby Thundernuts. Sally's man got one. Dave Blake. Tim Smith. H. William Kane.
Wow.
Alan Varado. So thank you, Double B. Brandon, man, you are killing it tonight.
Wow. Thank you so much, sir.
Woo.
Yes.
All of you all killed it tonight. So thank you all for hanging out with us on a holiday night. You could be out watching fireworks. You're still going to have time, I think. It's not dark yet. It's getting there, though. But I can still see light out my window. So get your ass if you're going to watch some fireworks like Joe. Head on down, and we'll let you go. But thanks for hanging out with us. And like I said, before we go, I got one final message, Joe, from our friend and host of the Church of What's Happening Now podcast, Joey Diaz. Here we go.
Okay.
This week is the 4th of July. With what's been going on lately in the fucking world, make it the best 4th of July you know. Put your fucking Nazi helmet on and get ready. Some deep shit might happen. Or then again, something might not happen. But the only thing that's supposed to happen is we're supposed to be the best Americans that we could fucking ever be. And that's all you can do. Me, I don't vote, but I pay taxes. I pay taxes on reefer. I do all the right things. I don't jaywalk. You know, I do all the right things. I did my crime. I did my time. I paid my debt to society. And what do you want from me? I got a warrant in Seattle, but fuck that. That was 30 years ago, and I've never got in trouble again. So who won that fucking dog fight? Hello? Anyway, happy 4th of July to you and your families. Appreciate the liberties that you have. Why are you at home watching stupid fucking games and getting ready for the Jets? Who gives a fuck? Go out there and be a fucking American. That's it. Trump is helping you. He's cleaning out the country. He's helping you now. You got no more excuses. Why would I want to mow a lawn? Mexicans are going to mow a lawn. White people are going to be in demand again. Thank God to Trump. That's it. But do you really want the job? That's next week's podcast. Do you really want the fucking job after Trump gets rid of it? Are you going to learn how to bake? Are you going to learn how to clean a bathroom? No! Anyway, I love you guys. Have a happy 4th of July with your families.
Goddamn right. Dino, come on in. Ruby, get your ass up here. Folks, thanks for hanging out with us. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, slam the fucking like button. Slam it. Share it.
Yes,
You
please.
think? Spread the word far and wide. Tag Jefferson Morley in the comments section. I don't give a fuck. Bring him on in.
The quotation is Jim Garrison's. It could be used for him or against him.
Hi, Rubies. Hi.
There she is. There's our little girl. Ruby wants to go watch the fireworks, Joe.
I'm not sure if she's scared of fireworks. I guess we'll have to find out.
One way to find out, sir.
Good night, Double B. Hope you have a great birthday with your son, and thank you for your memberships. We love you, and tune in later this weekend when we will drop our next book review.
Hell yeah, we're doing those now.
Yes, we are. Check it out.
And that's it for us. Happy 4th of July, people.
Happy
Go
4th.
celebrate your freedom.
America, fuck yeah.